Alrighty, good evening. I believe we're ready to begin our deliberations for the evening. And I think the first thing we were going to begin with is reports from the dais. And I think we'll begin with the university.
Thanks, Chairman Mitchell. I do not have any specific reports to share today.
All right, Ms. Redker.
I don't think I have anything to report. I did feel like my introduction was kind of brief last time because I was trying to be in a hurry. So I just wanted to mention I'm happy to be here, and I didn't mention I was on the Housing Authority Board for 6 years. I have 2 kids in the schools. I do work at UVA, so I'm really excited when I get to do real, not theoretical things. Thank you.
And Mr. Soliet.
Mr. Freese and I spoke at the Fry Spring Neighborhood Association about the new zoning. Some technical issues, but mostly positive.
Okay.
You might make a presentation.
I take full responsibility for all problems.
Mr. Duranzo.
Yes, sir. Let's see. CDBG update is that due to the extraordinary behaviors of Congress this time around, the money and approval of the budget is so late that HUD can't tell us exactly what the dollar amounts are. Those that are more in the know than I are saying hopefully by May, which is when CDBG is supposed to come before this body. So I am moving forward with providing with the task force providing recommendations based on dollars to be trumped by percentages if it changes the dollar amount in any significant way, except when we're complying with council directives, which are done by the dollar, not by percentage. So it may be a little sloppy. HAC is continuing to meet regarding the land bank. We've had 2 extremely productive meetings regarding that. Some of that has garnered interest elsewhere and in other localities who are looking at us and what we might be doing. The TJPDC met. Nothing really in that meeting that would be of relevance to this body.
Yeah, we had a LUPEC meeting back in March. We had presentations from the Statewide Trails Office, the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, and the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, just kind of general overviews of what those bodies do. I'll try to get the presentations to send it out to you guys. I don't think I got them, but they were interesting. I also had a meeting of the MPO Technical Committee. That was dominated by a discussion of the Barracks Road project. Essentially, as you might recall, or if you took the survey, hopefully, the 2 options are a roundabouts on either side of the underpass under 250, plus a roundabout at Georgetown, or just sidewalks and limiting kind of turns along the corridor. But because there isn't much room under the underpass, and if without a roundabout you would need a turn lane, there wouldn't be room for a shared use path the whole way. But it was the opinion of many members of the committee that there were still ways to make the roundabout design more pedestrian friendly. Removing slip lanes, adding mid-block crossing somewhere between Georgetown and the interchange. And we conveyed that to VDOT. I understand that following that meeting, the county specifically requested several changes, including removing the slip lanes at the roundabouts at the 250 interchange. And it proceeded the policy board gave approval to proceed with the pre-application for Smart Scale, but that design will be further refined.
Very good. Mrs. Schwartz.
Nothing of significance from last month's BAR meeting. Next week, though, the BAR is looking at a preliminary discussion for a potential hotel use on the Artful Lodger site, which we had given an SUP as a residential project. So might be interesting to find out why that became a hotel versus residential, and whether that had to do with our zoning code. And that's all I got.
Cool. Right, as you guys know, we are down one member of our body. Mr. Habab resigned. He resigned based on a principle that he holds very dear. I respect the principle that, upon which he resigned, and I respect the fact that he stood by the principles in the way that he did. He has been a significant contributor to our group, especially as we develop the comp plan, especially as we develop the ordinance, and will be missed. I am grateful for all the work that he put in with us. More important, though, I'm grateful for the friendship that we developed over the last couple of years. So he'll be missed, but he leaves a hole. And one of the holes he leaves is committee assignments. And there are a couple that I have not been able to figure out how to fill yet. The first is the Tree Commission. The Tree Commission meets every first Thursday at 5 o'clock in Parks and Rec. And that's a very important commission. The other one of great importance is the Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee. That meets the third Wednesday of every other month at 7 in the Water Street Conference Room. I am looking for folks to step up. Ms. Retker, you raise your hand.
I'm happy to fill both of those, unless anyone else is looking for me to fill in.
I think
Want anything to
at
change?
least one of them is important, because
Okay.
I need to get you on a standing committee, but
Yes.
most of us have a couple of standing committees, but let's see if anyone else is interested in these.
I am provisionally interested in a tree commission subject to review from my SO.
For now, Ms. Creasy, let's put Ms. Rutger on the tree commission and on the transportation thingy. And if, check on your significant other and your daughter, make sure that they're cool with it. And it's possible that you guys can renegotiate this. Okay? All right, thanks. All right, Glenn, so we are, based on that, Ms. Creasy, we've got everything, right? Everything covered.
We do.
All right, on to Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec, they continue to punch above their weight. They just get a lot of work done with not a lot of people. The last meeting, we talked about a lot of things, but I'm just going to kind of walk you guys through 4 of the things that we talked about. The first was Jenkins Park, and I copied you guys on the presentation earlier about that. The precipitating event was just a lot of dog waste in the park. And the residents in West Haven, Jenkins Park is just outside of West Haven. And it is a passive park, so it's just kind of place where you kind of come hang out, maybe the kids play a little bit, but not much to do but relax there. Well, the residents think that they're having a difficult time relaxing there because the poop makes it uncomfortable and to some degree unsafe for the kids. The PowerPoint presentation that I sent you guys kind of walks you through what we're doing to mitigate that issue, but it also walks you through things that we want to do to just fix up the park and make it an even nicer place for our city residents, like Lyle, for example, who visited recently to check out. So the presentation's on your laptops. Should have been there as of 3 o'clock. But the issue around dog waste in the parks has, again, got us thinking again. And there is some thought about revisiting the ordinance as it relates to dogs in parks. And so, once again, we're thinking through that. And as that evolves, I'll get back to you guys. There is also talk about maybe we need a couple dog parks in the city as well. So I'll keep you guys up to date as we evolve through that. The pools update. We ain't got enough folks to cover the pools. We are worried. We're worried that we may not be able to be open full time. All the pools open full time during the coming season. The recruitment efforts are underway and they are intense. We're hoping to get there, but we are worried that we may not be able to have full-time staffing for all the parks throughout the season. But again, we're working. The next update is we are in the middle of the Parks and Rec master plan engagement. and we are beginning to do charrettes. In fact, I think many of you may have gotten a little mail, a little survey in the mail recently. If you did get that survey in the mail, please fill it out and send it back to us. But there are going to be 3-4 charrettes in the next few weeks. The first will be at Crow Rec, and that's going to be on Sunday, April 21 from 3 to 5. Crow Rec, Sunday, April 21, 3 to 5. The next will be in Jenkins Park, 3 to 5. Sunday, April 28th. Jenkins Park, 3 to 5. Sunday, April 28th. The next one will be in Washington Park, and that'll be Saturday, May 4th, 3 to 5. Washington Park, Saturday, May 4th, 3 to 5. And the last will be on Saturday, May 11th. Saturday, May 11th, 3 to 5. And that's going to be at Forest Hills Park. Saturday, May 11th, 3 to 5, Forest Hills Park. And I sent you guys actually a little slide with the dates on it, so you guys have it. If you guys can make it out, it'd be great to get your thoughts there. The last update relates to Oakwood Cemetery. As you know, there's been standing water in Oakwood Cemetery. It's been there for a little while. There is, or at least used to be, a little stream that ran through or around the park, and we believe that the drain that we built to manage that stream is broken. We do believe that we can fix it. The challenge will be fixing it without disturbing the remains that are there. So we've got some experts coming in to help us think about how we get it fixed in a way that's respectful to the remains and the families of those folks that are there. Ms. Creasy, I think you have the floor.
Sure. If there's anyone in the audience that's interested in those parks and recreation items that Mr. Mitchell's been referring to, I was looking to see. I'm guessing that they're on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board site, but I haven't quite found them yet. But if you're inquiring and you're having trouble with that, please just give me a call or email me, creasym@charlottesville.gov, and I'll assist you in getting to those resources. Let's see, we do not have a work session scheduled for April. We're kind of slowly working ourselves back into that because we were meeting once and twice a week for a number of months. But I assume we'll work ourselves back into some work session topics as time goes on. Do want to note we're on week 3 of meeting with applicants on pre-application meetings. And we've been doing those every Wednesday morning and scheduling those so that we've had a good team of people to be able to communicate with folks concerning projects. We've definitely found some things that we need to work on to try and see if we can get to projects to fruition. But it's been very fruitful, and we've talked with a number of people who are interested in implementing aspects of the current ordinance. We do not have anything that is coming for hearing to you guys right away. Folks are still working through the initial phases of that. But I anticipate that we will have some things in the coming months, probably in the summer months. Did want to note the CDBG and Home will be coming forward for public hearing in May, as Mr. Duranzio noted. We're working with the staff now to work through how best to make that advertisement happen in our questionable situation, timing-wise, but that's actually pretty normal for that funding source, and they've given us some ways to be able to maintain that process. So that will be coming forward to you guys in May. And I want to give the floor to James to give you all some updates. We've had a lot of different things happening here since we last met, and so we may want to share a few with you.
What are we?
Well,
I'm not sure what you have in mind. Well, I think everybody here knows at this point that I've been appointed to the Deputy City Manager of Operations role, so, but I will remain as interim director of NDS until we fill that position, and that position has been advertised. We should be also shortly advertising our planning manager position as well, so that both of those are coming up. We also recently filled one of our property maintenance positions, so a bunch of things going on in that space. Upcoming at the next council meeting agenda will be a request for funding for a small project to put together what I'm calling a pre-approved stormwater solutions for small-scale infill development projects. So this is recognizing that our projects that are 3 units, say between 3 and 6 or 3 and 8 units, really struggle to deal with the stormwater management issue under our current requirements, both here at the city level and at the state level. So this is an attempt to see if we can't come up with a kind of a pre-approved approach that kind of works out the engineering design aspect of a project, so that a project can basically come in and say, yeah, we're gonna use your formula, your specs, and here's how it fits on the site, meets all the requirements, and off we go. So it's a funding request in front of council to support that work going forward. Commissioner Schwartz raised a second ago the project at the Artful Lodger site. Note that was approved under the previous zoning ordinance, and they're now proposing to move forward with a different project under the new ordinance. I've met with the developer and talked about the basis for the decision, and it's not about the current ordinance. It's purely a financial decision. Any questions for me? Anything I'm missing?
No, I think you
Okay.
did a great job.
What's the planning manager position?
So the planning manager position, so Missy has been both planning manager and deputy director of the department for a number of years. And so the idea here is to recognize that actually is 2 roles. And while Missy has done an admirable job of carrying both of those, we basically are going to carve those out. The planning manager position will oversee all of our planning, the entire planning division, and oversee in particular the development review process. And we'll be partnering with our partner agencies that we work with on the development review process to achieve the improvements that we're seeking to do basically expediting and resolving a number of issues with how we approach development review. That'll be one aspect of what they do, but a significant one. It's just recognizing that that's pursuing that project, pursuing and overseeing that division is in and of itself a full-time job, leaving aside anything that comes with being deputy director of the department.
Cool. I thought Missy was planning manager. I got worried for a second there.
Yeah. No, nothing to worry about. There is more than enough to do.
Cool. All right, James, I want to thank you for your leadership. You did what you came here to do, and that was to get us through the comp plan and to get the zoning ordinance written. You got that done. You led us through that, and we are grateful.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And I'm with you for a little while longer at least, so, but thank you.
Anything else? Right, I think we are ready for matters to be presented by the public that are not on the formal agenda. Ms. Creasy, will you moderate?
Sure. Just want to let folks know that we only have one hearing this evening, and it's on a code amendment. So there'll be an additional time for comment on that item. But if you want to speak to anything else, including the entrance corridor item that we have on the agenda, this would be the opportunity to do that. So we'll do what we typically do. We will open it up for comment for in-person first, and then we'll move to our virtual audience. And each individual who wants to speak will have 3 minutes to do so. So we'll begin with our in-person audience, and if there's anyone who's interested in speaking, then you are welcome to come forward and provide your name and address, and then provide your comments. All right, we don't have an in-person person to speak at this moment, so we'll move to our virtual audience. I don't have that up. Patrick, do you have that to see if?
We have one person.
Do we have a hand raised?
No, we do not.
We do not. Okay, so in our virtual audience, if you are interested in speaking, please raise your hand in the application. If you're on a telephone, please hit *9 and that will raise your hand in the application. All right, no progress there. Okay, we'll give it one more chance to our in-person group. All right, and to our virtual group. All right, Chair, it doesn't look like we have a speaker
Right,
from
we
Madison
the
County.
public hearing, the initial public hearing is closed. We are now ready for a motion regarding the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion.
Oh, do you?
I do. I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda. I'd like to change some things in the minutes. Lupec, spell check to spell as capital L, capital U, capital P, capital P, capital C. That's just how it is. On page 164, I'd like to change my report to read, I have not gotten clarity, and in sentence 4 to read, change the word output to height. Mr. Duranzio also had some changes.
Page 136 of the packet, deletion of one word in my report, residence,
Thank you.
which has already been brought to staff's attention.
That's what I have.
All right, is there a second?
I'll go second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? All right, the minutes are approved. And we are now ready for our one and only public hearing. And that relates to ZT 24-01-01. And this is a proposed amendment to the text of our development code, some amendments in chapter 34. This corrects something that was omitted from the original code that we probably should have carried over. And Mr. Freeze, I think you're going to coach us through this,
Either way.
or whomever.
No, not really. Either one of us can speak. Totally fine.
Yeah, so this item is, again, addressing a omission from the development code. Basically, this is language that recognizes that when the city acquires property from a property owner, say as part of a street right-of-way acquisition or something like, and as a result of that acquisition, that property becomes non-conforming or non-compliant with the zoning ordinance, that property owner is essentially held harmless. So this is something that was in our previous code and needs to be carried forward, particularly as we have a number of street right-of-way acquisition projects in the works right now.
Yeah, my main question, so it talks about, I don't have the phrasing in front of me, too many verb things, but does acquisition include acquisition for zero cost if someone were to just give the city room for a sidewalk?
Yeah, I think it would cover that, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Anything else? All right, Ms. Creasy, would you moderate the public hearing? I think we're ready to
Sure.
open up for public hearing.
All right, we will follow the procedure we just followed. If there's anyone who's interested in speaking on this text amendment, if we have any in-person audience members, I'm not seeing any quite yet. We'll check with our virtual audience and see if anyone is interested in speaking on this text amendment. Patrick, do you see any hands?
There are no hands raised at this time.
All right, thank you. All right, one more time, just in case. All right, Chair, we don't have any speakers at this time.
All right, the public hearing is now closed. Deliberations. I'm just going to let you guys jump in if you want to jump in, because I'm not sure there's a whole lot to jump in about. So any thoughts?
Seems pretty straightforward.
Is there a motion?
I can get to the right page. Apparently I can't.
I have a motion. Based on a finding that the proposed zoning text amendments will serve the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, or good zoning practice, move to recommend approval of a zoning text amendment as proposed to Division 5.4.2, compliance with chapter of the Charlottesville Development Code.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No further discussion, Ms. Creasy?
Sure. Mr. Solly Yates.
Aye.
Mr. Duranzio.
Aye.
Mr. Stolzenberg.
Aye.
Ms. Roker. Aye. Mr. Schwartz.
Yes.
And Mr. Mitchell.
Aye. And that is passed. Congratulations, Mr. Freeze.
I just wanted to note procedure since this is the first hearing that we've had that hasn't been a joint hearing. So what will happen next is this item will move on to City Council. We will schedule it in such a way that we'll be able to advertise that. We've set up an advertising schedule for that. So if anyone is interested in the next step of when that will go to council, it will likely be probably the second meeting in May to council. And we'll present this item to council and hold a public hearing, and folks will have another opportunity to speak to it if they'd like.
Very good. Right. The planning commission is now in recess, and now I'm gabbling us into the ECRB for discussion of the verb. So we are now in ECRB, and the objective here is to do a design review. We're only looking at design elements and aesthetics. We're not looking at parking. We're not looking at transportation. We're not looking at density or other uses like this. Just, what the thing looks like. And I think, Jeff, Mr. Werner is gonna manage this one.
I will try my best. Ms. Roediger, welcome to the Planning Commission. I'm Jeff Werner. I'm the city's historic preservation and design planner. I do not frequently come to you all, so you won't see me as often as the Board of Architectural Review does. But while I'm at it, you all are down a member. The BAR continues to be down a member, so I can advertise. We need the seat for the owner of a business or a commercial property in a design control district. There's a vacancy there, so encourage anyone interested to apply. So yes, this is a COA request, an entrance corridor COA request for, I don't know whether to call it 100 Stadium Road or the Verve, so I kind of flip-flop between them. It's being reviewed as a PUD request that was approved by City Council, and with that, as we call it, the pre-February 19, 2024 ordinance prevails. And this is a 3.3 acre project located within the Fontaine Avenue JPA entrance corridor, and you all, the Planning Commission, serve as the Entrance Corridor Review Board and are responsible for design review of EC projects. The development of the site includes construction of an apartment complex. The existing structures on the site will be raised. The project, sort of at a street level, presents a continuous facade that I described as sort of starting at JPA and circling counterclockwise along Emmett Street and then along the Stadium Road to the intersection with Montebello Circle. The buildings range in height from 8 to 12 stories, predominantly feature at the first story an EIFS masonry panel. That is what's proposed, with the upper stories being EIFS and some metal panels. The streetscape will have a sidewalk continuous around the project. It features some stepped walls, terraced public areas, the entrances along the facades, a segment of commercial storefront, street trees and landscaping. The on-site parking will be concealed within the building. Currently, there are 9 structures on the site. Again, all will be raised, most constructed between late 1927 and into 1961. None of the properties are designated historic, nor is anything there a designated historic district. Obviously, this is a large project. I don't know of anything, certainly not with the entrance corridor BAR that we've seen in the city, maybe not even within a historic district or a design control district. But looking at the height, the massing, and the scale, and the spacing of the buildings, this project was reviewed, I think, at least 2 times when you all were looking at the PUD. City Council looked at it twice, and so and given that review and some of the approvals, had to assume generally the heights, the spacing, the scale was appropriate. So a lot of what I talk about is more the design of the buildings themselves. And one of the things I looked at was that the building lengths, we all learned the lesson from what happened on West Main. But these building lengths, when looked at sort of at the street level, looking at things throughout the city, we have some long buildings, we have some short facades. These generally fall in the middle, so wasn't anything troubling there. I also looked at the project sort of as a city block, if you will. It's a large block, but it does, kind of represent those four sides, four streets, and a building form within it. That's not out of scale with a lot of what's in the city. The building materials, their variation in materials, variation in the color. The wall panels are articulated, both physically and materially with the changes. The building heights obviously vary. There's the streetscape elements really encourage pedestrian activity, but really at that level, all in all, they overall perception of the and visual impact of the height and massing and scale will be mitigated. A big question that has, I think we'll spend some time on this evening, is the EIFS, which is a synthetic stucco material. And I realize the guidelines, which were written in 2011, do not recommend this. This is a question the BAR struggled with as well. That material has changed significantly since in the last several years. There's a lot of synthetic materials we allow on buildings. We, most recently, you all approved 2005 JPA, which had some EIFS, and there was a specific condition that was added to the COA, and I've recommended that in the proposed conditions. The question had come up about the wall detail, and I had included that rendering. And if you'll forgive me here, I don't have anything fancy to show you, but just sitting here, the panels can have a joint that is proud, and by proud we mean it extends above the surface, or it can be in form of a reveal, and that reveal could be slender or wide. It depends. So that's sort of the two kind of themes that we're talking about here.
So what's the other one called? That's the proud. The other one is the reveal, or the what?
I'd call it a reveal. There's probably 101 architecture words for it, but yes, I'd call it a reveal. But it also, I said, it can simply be.
I think you said flush and proud.
Well, flush in the sense that there can be the reveal can be tight, so almost as like a line, so the joint seemingly is flush. That was my point there, right? So a reveal, call that flush, call that proud. So, and it's, the architect, and I discussed it, and I think, I'll allow to them to present the information they have. I know that they did provide and brought some samples tonight. I printed some of what they have. I don't know, I said, so I've got 5 or 6 if you need them. Neil's got them. So it really is that, I think, from where I stand, when you look at this project, I know council requested that gap as you're coming down Emmett Street and broke up the buildings there, and that achieved a lot of sort of visually for me. But I think what's left here is where you all stand on this detail of the EIFS material. And in fact, if you have issues with the material overall, we certainly can explore that. But I thought that those were the two things that, along with the recommendations I've made of recommended conditions, I think if those can be, if the EIFS and the detail question can be resolved, and if the conditions I've offered make sense, then I would support approval of the project.
All right, Mr. Schwartz, you have any questions for these?
For me, or you want to jump to the applicant?
Let's see if any of the Any of the commissioners have questions for you first?
I think I can save my questions for the applicant.
Ditto.
Clear, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll wait for the applicant. Thank you.
Yeah,
So I think I've got a question now, although it may just be a statement. My first round with the Planning Commission, John Fink, the infamous John Fink, was the chairman of the Planning Commission. And his counsel to us was always insist on the use of noble materials in the entrance corridor area. And one of the most ignoble materials, in his humble opinion, was EFS. But that was 10 years ago. I'm hearing that it has evolved in a significant way. I'm wondering if you can just, for my sake, kind of help me get comfortable with the new iteration of EFS and the fact that it's going to be, we can start thinking of it as a noble material.
It's a difficult one here. I'm not particularly a fan of artificial synthetic materials, but I haven't been a builder for almost 25 years, so I can't comment really on that. I believe that a lot of it has to do with how something is done. And I could walk you through town and show you some masonry projects that are terrible. Some within a few hundred yards of here. So it really comes down to the execution, a quality material, and qualified mechanics. There are materials out there that are generic. The Stowe product has a good reputation, but how far you all want to go in specifying a particular product. But I'm not an expert on EFS. I've certainly learned a lot simply working with the BAR and some of the comments they've had, but it usually comes down to if it's done right and done well, and it's the right product in the right location, it can perform as hoped for. But I don't want to, I feel uncomfortable feeling like I want to convince you to use EFS, if that makes sense. I don't know enough to say you should use it versus something else. So, and that's where I think the architects and
What's the
his
most
experience-
recent iteration of, what's the most recent use of EFS in Charlottesville? I mean, where we actually have used it, and how's it weathering?
A lot of places on West Main, yeah. One of the places we used it that they had some problems, was done poorly, was at Lewis, or the
The
Cherry.
apartment buildings were done properly. Those were EFS. The hotel, I thought, was a weird, not EFS synthetic stucco that they had to replace with
Right.
EFS. It was, so they used stucco,
Synthetic
but
stucco.
it was a
Replaced with-
it was a very bizarre, like, it wasn't on insulation. It was, I'm not quite sure what they did, but they had to replace it. But the apartment building next door at the corner of Ridge and Cherry is EFS.
The Virginia Avenue project is
Yeah.
EFS. So-
Any questions for Jeff?
Well, I mean, this has sparked something about, I mean, I agree with you, I distressingly have a vast amount of experience with the installation of EFS and its variations at an excruciatingly detailed and expensive level.
No, that's not brick.
Unfortunately. And what I have seen is that with EFS, or whether we're calling it stucco-like that is really EFS or whatever, that you are correct, that this is about the installation and the proper monitoring of that installation. So I'm not sure what, should we move forward with that, how, I mean, it seems it would come with a very stern admonition, follow all the directions and let's, make sure your engineers are out. I mean, I don't know how else to handle that. I mean, one of the tragedies of earlier EFS products was in installation is that nobody explained how it to be done. So there are a couple of buildings in town where the felt underlayment that lies against the plywood, the idea is from top to bottom, you need to lap each sheet so that you're creating a path for moisture to stay on top. and go down between that and the material, and that all sorts of buildings were built exactly the opposite, and that felt was applied different in exactly the opposite fashion. So instead of being overlapping to drive water down, it was underlapping and driving the water into the building, which then starts to rot the wood, and then the termites show up, and then you get out there with a backhoe and just clean up the mess. So that's the fear, that if it's not installed properly, 15 years from now, you've got a disaster.
I think the architects
Yeah, can speak to that, yeah.
Speak to, the product they're going to use, but I will say that the Stowe products it's a complete system, and that's one of the things is that you use the complete system.
Right.
You follow their instructions, and they are built in with a drainage plane that is behind the insulation, so that, Phil was saying, the problem originally with EIFS is either water got in from, infiltration from cracks or whatever, or it just was, people didn't understand how moisture management with water vapor worked. So it either would come from the inside of the building or come from the outside, but it gets stuck in there and then it rots. And that's
Improper seat
that has
holes.
been
Yeah.
resolved. As far as my personal opinion, EIFS is a better product than stucco. Stucco it's more problematic than EIFS at this point, but that's my own personal opinion.
So we'll talk about this more, but it looks like the devil is in the insulation details. And maybe later on when we start talking back and forth, we can talk about what we can do to mitigate this, to make sure that the installation goes well. And
But from an aesthetic perspective, right, are we talking about installation can make it look worse, or it'll make the building rot inside? Because as an entrance corridor review board member, I don't care about the building rotting, right?
Well, you do if in 10 years the facade is peeling off.
You might care if it falls over into JPA when you're going through them.
It's not great aesthetically, but
The last big house I built up in Arlington, the owner wanted a maintenance-free house, and we had to explain to them, no, there's no such thing. They're just there isn't. And so it is a question that, you are looking at aesthetics, and there's, the assumption, I think rightfully, that quality materials build a quality building, but something can still be done wrong. And I think we're seeing this proliferation of artificial materials that are, the jury's still out for me as far as, what in 50 years that's going to be. But the Code building, for example, it was supposed to be brick, and it is now, when they value engineered it, as a brick tile. You can't tell the difference. So I think from the aesthetics, if it's the Stowe product, we have specifications for materials, windows, for example, or various things. So if they're, bricks, is select brick selections based on this. If there is comfort that, from what I've understood, the Stowe product that's the line that if you're going to do it, that does it right. But what that building is going to look like in 20 years, I don't know. So I can't sort of speak on that behalf of the material. But I think if it's built right and done right and maintained, then the owner has a built-in interest to keep that building standing and looking nice. So, and then got two architects, and I don't want to put Mike or Carl on the spot, but maybe some more familiarity with the materials that are out there than I have.
all right, let's chat with the applicant.
Okay, if you have that presentation handy, we can go through that. I'll just talk for a very brief amount of time. I think we're honed in on a specific topic here, so let's focus the questions and time on that. Neil Reardon, ESG Architecture and Design, on behalf of the larger design team. Good to see you all again, and our development team, Subtext. So thank you for having us back. I'll briefly just summarize these. I know we have a new commissioner this evening. We'll go very quickly through the beginning of the slides and then just focus on a few exterior material things here for you. New information. just a couple pieces of supplementary information, not new information. So if you can page ahead in the presentation. This submitted packet, which you've already seen, has location and context, so just keep going, I can stop you. And you've all seen this before, project site location. Really, as if you just want to keep paging, there's probably about 30 slides here to just go through. But as you do that, if you have any questions on anything non-exterior material related, please do ask. The renderings perspectives here, I'll use these just as we go through. This is the view from, these are going to go counterclockwise, starting in the southeast as we approach from JPA. So this is the view as we come in from JPA. There's a street view along JPA at the very southeastern corner of the building. And there you can start to see the major materials, both the Stowe brick at the base as well as the Stowe metal panel 3-color, which is what we're calling a 3-color champagne. Again, from JPA, you've seen this rendering before in previous presentations. This is the direct east elevation at the northeast corner of the project. You can see the keynotes there on the site plan and the orange arrows. Again, this was in your packet already. So, all right, a few more renderings here. This is the northeast corner. You've seen this one as well. Zooming in then to start to understand some of that materiality of the charcoal Stowe brick panel. We are looking to achieve this material by using this EFIS product. And you can see here these two major volumes, as well as much of the base of the project does have that charcoal masonry material. The walk-ups as well, so the 2-story volume, which as the grade changes turns into a 1-story volume, has this brick base, and what we're trying to convey there is the depth and materiality that you've already seen and has been approved through the PUD process. At the walk-ups, there are some accents of metal panel there that you see in the tan color, as well as those light fixtures in a tan or gray color. So I know there was, those are less major materials, but I'll just note those here as we're on that rendering. So this is the north side of the building. Again, another shot of the north side of the building, just showing those active uses of the walk-ups and that same materiality I just mentioned. Moving around to where the commercial space is, I know there's a question here on the materiality of the decking that we're proposing there at the landscape terrace, where this, outdoor gathering area would happen in front of that market. What we're proposing there is very simple material decking to sort of handle some of the verticals and possibly some of the horizontal changes in that grade change that we think will be a nice dynamic piece in front and near the main entrance for people to congregate, whether they're residents of the building or not. So a simple decking material, likely a tan and earth colored tone that complements other things we're doing on the design. Okay, so then marching around to the northwest corner of the building, where this landscape triangle is out in the right-of-way, where Stadium and Emmett bisect each other. This is the view of the main corner of the building, and there you can see again that charcoal brick volume on the right, sort of holding that main entry of the western building, and then the tricolor panel majority material in 3 modules on the north building on the left-hand side of the page. All right. View pulled back there from that same corner. Again, you can kind of see the massing of both the north and the west buildings, the west building being on the right. And even further back from, say, the bridge above Stadium Road and Emmett as it goes north. And then just kind of working our way around, here's that west building, the modules, and the again, noting the dark charcoal product representing as the masonry, but as that dark material that's in those voids. All right. Getting a little more granular down to the street level, we wanted to show a few more renderings here of what this is. This is the porte-cochere drop-off zone, primarily at level 1, and at the main entry, this is storefront windows too. So again, not a major material in the project, but significant enough to note here as a materiality piece for you all. All right. And then just a sidewalk view, kind of showing more of the urban design related aspects. I know we're not focusing on those necessarily tonight because you may not have questions, but this is the sort of relationship to the public right-of-way, and just wanted to note those things we're doing here with bike lanes, sidewalks, some of the retaining walls I know there was questions on, and landscaping in those zones. So, all right. And then just marching around, this is the view from the southwest of the corner, Montebello and Stadium Road intersection, and the materiality again there, trying to, as we have this step back at the 3-story volume, with that, again, that darker material holding the base, and then the module of the tricolor panel there above. Okay. We can probably breeze through a few of these, and then I have a few material boards, and I'll conclude with those as much of the rest of the presentation. I'm going to go maybe to 37. I think we're at 26 there. Sure. Either way, if you just want to page through. I'll just note that we have the full flattened elevations here, excuse me, and those are available. You know, I don't necessarily always like to focus on these because you never see the building in true elevation form. I think if we, you know, we can zoom in on the renderings as you have questions and go at it that way. A few more slides ahead, if you would. Just wanted to note that those are there for that purpose. Okay, so major materials, as already noted, the masonry panel. This is the Stowe brick, the dark charcoal color. And then the other major material, which actually is a significantly more square footage on the facade, is the 3 color blend of the champagne colors, color 1, 2, and 3. And this is a metallic finish EIFS product, also a Stowe product. So we, just to kind of cut to the chase, we believe that we do not have any concerns on the water envelope, as EIFS, as already been mentioned, as in your prior discussion, has come a long way in the last 15 to 20 years. It's a lot different product. So we would never do something like, for instance, without a drainage plane. Additionally, the thermal properties of the EIFS panel and the wall system that you get with the envelope is been significantly enhanced as well. So while many architects were not comfortable specifying this product 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, justified by your guidelines back then, it is something now that we are comfortable doing so. And it allows us to really much more variation in the facade. So when we designed this, we wanted to allow for some flexibility, and the jointing and the patterning we did here, in addition to, you know, a key here is having the masonry look at the dark charcoal, but then having the modularization and jointing pattern on the tricolored champagne be varied and dynamic on these very large facades. And so that was intentional, and these products that we have in front of you are allowing us to carry that out. So one slide ahead, please. So those are those panels. I have a physical board back here as well, if you want to see that.
Yeah, bring it over.
I'll start over here. And you could probably just pass that through as I finish kind of presenting. But here's in this light, not necessarily representational up on the screen, but you can see there in the physical form the metallic finish of those 3 colors. So then there's a 4th color of this metallic as well, and that is a dark charcoal version of it. This primarily exists on the upper levels of the floor as we step back, and the facade sort of changes at usually towards the top of the building.
Is this the actual product, or is this like?
So yeah, actually, if you can go one more slide ahead, it is represented if you zoom out. Yeah, thank you. That is representational of some of the texture. What we're not able to do is get an exact sample of the color. So if you look here, first change.
So this is the thickness too?
That is, yes, that is the thickness of the product itself. The backing and the wall envelope would be far thicker than that, you know. But mortar variation and that texture is improved from that. I think you'll see in the following slides, if we can go through those, that maybe one more. The photo there representing, first of all, the masonry, the mortar color is more representational up on the screen, so it's much closer to the actual brick color, which is a key for us to have in these charcoal zones, if you will. The photos you see here as supplementary to the material board are conveying the materiality and the depth of that mortar. I think that was your question. Does it look like real mortar, like brick has? This is a project in Nashville built by Subtext. And it has, while a different masonry color represented in the red brick and then a more standard mortar color, the quality there is representational of actually having a texture on the brick. If this were to be a stenciled brick, thin like that, without any variation or texture or depth to the mortar, we wouldn't really want to do that product because it's not achieving what we're looking for. So we're happy that it does, and with the climate of cost escalation in the construction market and inflation generally over the last 1 to 2 years, it is the spot we're at to achieve the design aesthetic we've set forth in the project. So I think there might be one more slide, a straight-on view of that brick. Maybe one up, two up actually, if you have it. Right there, you can kind of see in this straight-on view, and we can zoom in on this if you'd like, the built form, again, of that, granted a different color of masonry and a different color of mortar, but that really conveys, I think, what this would touch and feel like up close from, call it, within 10 to 20 feet at the street presence. Then as we go up the building, I think, you wouldn't even need this level of texture and articulation up 10 stories on the building. So I'll leave that there for questions. If there's anything else in the presentation not related to this particular topic, happy to go to that.
Do have one question not related to that. Would you go to your neighborhood context? UVA Grounds starts on page 66.
Sure.
And then from there, would you go to, the reason I'm asking is I love the lawn, and I want to make sure that we protect the views from the lawn. And I think you do a pretty good job of walking me through what this is going to look like on page 68.
Yep,
page
and
70 and 71.
Yeah, this is 62, if you go a few more ahead. Yeah, I believe you're talking about this section here. Yeah.
Next slide is the first one. And so this suggests that I will not be able to see this from the rotunda.
Yes, that's correct. These exhibits were submitted in a prior submittal and various points along the project's history, if you will. But I don't know that we've explicitly had them up at this body particular. Happy to go through them, and that's why we included them in the packet.
I mean, real quick, because there's a lot of concern from the community, especially from the university community, or from people like me who love the institution. A lot of folks are worried about this looming over the lawn.
Right.
So this suggests that it will not, but.
Yeah, we can just quickly go through these. This is the view, from the rotunda, and then we march south in subsequent pages here. And so this blue view is, I call it, almost halfway down. We tried to pick ones where we thought it would be visible. We know for sure, actually, we can say that it isn't visible from anywhere on the lawn, if you hadn't heard that in a prior presentation or documented. But what we did here with the particular views shown in these exhibits was pick spots where we think it could be visible from here. This is the worst possible, scenario for visibility, and it was not viewable from there. Mostly due to the buildings that do surround the lawn and their proximity and closeness to the lawn. And then additionally, our project is down in grade significantly in a bowl, and that is the major reason why it is not seen from much of the grounds and for sure from the lawn.
Can you just expand a little bit about the process in which you were able to do this montage? I know there was the plan about evaluation, there was a section. Typically, I've seen these done, and they're usually, you see the 3D model of sort of the surrounding environments. It seems like the dashed lines you have identified in each of these images is shockingly close to being visible. Like, there's not a lot of buffer, and so knowing that these are somewhat crude photo representation exhibits, how can you ensure the accuracy of what's being shown?
Well, you're not wrong. It is difficult to ascertain the exact specificity of an angle, call it from a half a mile away, taking into account vegetation on trees and the tops of buildings. What we do know is that the buildings do hide it. We specifically chose depictions here where there were not leaves on the trees, so we're not really counting on that particular thing. What we can verify to an extent level of accuracy is we know the grades. Those exist, and we know what grade our building is at and the height of our building. And while the view sheds are relatively close to the treetops, the accuracy of the depiction is there to a level. I don't know what kind of level we could do more than this without significant, survey work and other items.
So was GIS used to model this, or any type of large model, or was it just clearly an extrapolation from a two-dimensional representation and then an approximation from a photo point?
We have a three-dimensional model with accurate grades, of which these
All
points.
the way to the rotunda?
All of which is, yes, yeah. I mean, for instance, on Google Earth, that's public knowledge, and there is GIS public knowledge to buffer it on what those points of elevation are.
And those tools are used to
Yeah.
verify this? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, for instance, we didn't randomly pick a viewpoint and assign it a grade point elevation that we didn't know what it was. We did know what the grade point elevation was. As well, of course, in even more detail, our buildings' grade point elevations and our building height.
All right, why don't we begin with Mr. Schwartz?
I was gonna buy Carl some more time to ruminate, but if you're in.
No, I've got a big long list. Sorry. Okay, so I'm not sure you ever actually gave us the specific Stowe products that, like, when I go on Stowe's website, you look up architectural panel, there's still like a
There's a lot.
different products.
Yeah.
Have you guys narrowed that down?
We haven't exactly narrowed down a specific product for you. If that were to be something this body would want, we can do that. We weren't under the impression that that was a requirement for this presentation or your review. Specifying an exact material in many of these cases would be a little bit early to commit to exactly something. We want to make sure that product doesn't change in price. We want to make sure that product is available when this project is built. So committing to specifying exact materials is a difficult thing to do.
I guess, well, so you list these as architectural panels. Are they, when I think of panel, I think of something that's prefab and put on the building. Is that what it is? Or are you going to do it the traditional system, you put up the EIFS and then you spray everything?
Gotcha. Yeah, no, these would be field finished, not completely panelized in a factory. So it's a field finish for both major materials, for the tricolor champagne as well as the Stowe brick. I think at the time of the submittal, we were considering a panelized version. One of the reasons for using this process is there's a lot of site constraints out here, which drives the labor up. And so that primarily is one of the reasons other materials had that cost price point that didn't work for us.
So you've got the three different colors of, the three champagne colors, and you're going to field finish those. Does that mean you have to go around the building 3 times?
I don't know the exact process that the contractor would use, but yes, it would probably be cordoning off 2 of the 3, painting 1, or finishing 1, I should say, and then doing that subsequently with the other 2 in order to achieve that, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's not really our purview, but I was very curious how that was going to work. So you're showing some very deep reveals and profiles on the faux masonry. Are we going to get what we're seeing?
Yeah, I think there's a rendering there at the northeast corner, probably halfway through the rendering set there, where you're referring to some brick details in prior renderings. Yeah, so those renderings from last fall, where we were looking to achieve some dynamic things towards the base of the building, particularly at the bottom 2 stories.
Well, you're carrying it all the way up on the renderings. Is that not the case anymore?
Well, I want to say you could go to about page 15-ish, something like that. Yeah, that's the question, right? So is there an inset or a corbel or, these type of brick details that were conveyed in the renderings? That's what your question is about?
Yeah.
Yeah. We would love to achieve those. I don't know that they'll be achievable at all locations using this product.
Okay,
But for instance, there at the base, where we see it between the 2 windows on kind of sort of the left-hand side of the screen, that would be an instance where we would want to give it some depth to achieve what we've already presented to you as the exterior design.
Okay, and I don't mean this in a
Yeah.
snarky way, but the renderings are kind of a guide at this point.
They are, yep.
Okay.
They are, and with a building this big, as the process goes, we are conveying overall design aesthetic, and the execution of those individual details has to happen at a later date. But I do understand your question and the value that brings to the overall design. Perhaps if none of those were executed, this doesn't sing in the same way. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay. Well. Okay. More questions. Do you? Well, I guess without the specific products, you don't really have any warranty information, so we don't know how long the color's going to last, or do we?
We don't. No. I mean, I don't think anyone would ever know that, even with a warranty, for certain. But yeah, I mean, from a maintenance perspective, operationally, that we have to have a lifespan here that is, nearly equivalent to a more expensive material, right? So, I couldn't speak to exact warranty date or a lifespan number of years, but we are comfortable that this is not going to fail, like you've seen EFIS products from 20 years ago fail, either, with water infiltration or other, issues. So we use this product in extreme weather climates, such as, Minnesota to Arizona, call it. And so we're pretty comfortable with the technical envelope of this material on a building that's it's rather large, and there's rather a lot of this material on the building.
And I mean, this is a entrance corridor. It's not a architectural design control district, but at the same time, this is going to be the tallest building in Charlottesville on a very, very prominent location. So this is why I'm very nervous at the moment, the source of these questions. What's the wood look product that you're trying to use on the concrete?
Yeah, has not been honed in on specifically, but what we'd probably go there with is a composite deck that would be complementary. Mainly, the idea here is that the color of it and the use of it is complementary of that major champagne color. We hadn't honed in on the specific texture of it, or for sure the exact color of it, as we do want to complement what's happening at the lobby on the inside of the building, actually. And so just giving that kind of as a thing that carries through the building. We also will have some of it in the courtyard on the interior of the building and the private side. So
it's like a Trex-like product that you're going to laminate the concrete with.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be something that would be refinished on a year-to-year basis. That level of maintenance is not what we want. We want it to be given some hard use by people actually using that space. As I mentioned, residents or general public who's accessing that market, or just in the public right of way.
I know staff already flagged this, your reveal or not reveal details, but what is your thinking at the moment for that?
Yeah, I like how you asked about that question. One of the things, Commissioner, we showed in, I think, a zoomed-in view, I'll call it, of a rendering, was a outboard joint, both vertically and horizontally. We are not committed to that being outboard. In fact, if it were inboard, call it, that's probably a more likely detailing scenario of those joints. And again, you know, the joints were aligned when we didn't know for sure what material we would be proposing to you in this packet. So the pattern and the color summary that you get is meant to be shown to you here tonight. But the outboard, inboard question on the detail and the exact way it is detailed, we are open to how you might see.
What, like at the moment, are you thinking it's just it's a typical EFIS detail where you just use thicker or thinner insulation?
I think yes. Well, so it'll be the thickness of the material,
Yeah.
and then the insulation will probably be varied at that detail. But
Okay.
I couldn't say for sure.
As opposed to.
I couldn't draw you that exact detail
But
here tonight.
It sounds like it's
Yeah.
not a metal extrusion.
No, I don't believe it would be a metal extrusion in this detailing scenario. Like, for example, a fiber cement panel might have a metal extrusion.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you guys, do you have any lights that you're planning on the rooftops? I know you have some rooftop decks, you've got the pool.
We don't have any pool. The pool is at the lower courtyard, so there's no operationally nothing like that up on the roof. There is one roof space, and it is on, I don't know if it's in this set, but it's just on the east building, at the east end.
I think it was the corner of JPA and Emmett.
Actually, on the northeast corner. Yeah, JP and Emmett, that's correct. Yep, it's at that corner. There's a tapering back. If you go back up maybe a couple more, you'll be able to see the peel back. And there is a small exterior roof deck at that location. A few more back. And
Yeah, there you go.
maybe one more we'll see the top of this area. There. Yeah, so you see where that one-story volume comes back right at the truck. Yeah, that would have an exterior pad, exterior roof terrace, and there would be some wall pack lighting associated with that, but nothing major. Like there's no overhead brow trellis structure that really exists on there right now. If we were to do that, I think that would be set back against the building and non-visible. And then the lighting in those areas generally is not an airport lighting situation. It's a minimal, creating a comfortable ambiance.
Okay. So nothing's really gonna be spilling out into the street from up there.
No, yeah, I don't anticipate any lighting, other than what's been already depicted at the storefronts, which you want to spill out into the right of way, spilling out from the building.
Okay.
No.
You have a transformer that is located on the plan at the corner of Emmett and JPA that doesn't look like it shows up in the renderings.
Correct.
What is it? How big is it? What's the plans for screening it?
Thank you, Commissioner, for pointing that out. That would be important to clarify. If you go to the site plan, it actually is shown on there. We didn't depict it in each and every rendering as these were compiled over a number of months, as I mentioned. So on the site plan, I think it's probably towards the front here. A few more. Yeah. Well, here, this works. This was the block diagram with the dimensions that we illustrate. But if you point to the northeast part of the site, there is a transformer location there, and it's near the secondary entry, which I think is why you're making a point of it. There also are some bike racks there in black that you can see just to the right of it. We plan to screen that with vegetation right now. Oh, thank you. This zone right here. And so we plan to screen that as much as possible. We don't love the location of that and why it has to be there, but we understand that it
Gotta put them
does.
somewhere.
Yep, and there's others as well, but this is a big project that requires numerous. So we want to screen that. I would welcome your thoughts on how exactly you see that best screened out in the right-of-way. Some people like vegetation for that screening, and some people like...
Is there room for vegetation?
There is room for vegetation there, yes. It's not currently on the site plan as depicted, but we intend to screen that either with something robust with vegetation or a combination of a structured fence with vegetation on it in the growing seasons. So certainly open to I don't think the guidelines had anything specific, just that it did need to be screened.
Right.
And contextually, for instance, the other two are just different than that one. They're more on the side of the building. They're towards the right of way, of course, because that's where their access point is. But this one is really it will be a pretty major entry to the building for residents. And so because we've been stuck with that location, we would do an enhanced version of screening there. So they're 6 feet high. So whether it's structured fence with vegetation on it or less likely vegetation that grows 6 feet tall, which you need more space for, we are open to both of those things.
Okay,
So.
but at 6 feet is what you're thinking the typical height is of those?
Usually, yeah. I mean, or you want your screening to be 6 feet, whether they're the piece of equipment is more like 4 to 5, but
Okay.
you'd want to screen.
It's not a 10-foot box of,
Right. It's not. It's not gonna be like a generator that's 10 feet high.
Okay.
Yeah. That said, the specific piece of equipment is specified by the utility provider as well, so we'd have to make sure we have that. But generally, I don't see any anywhere around the country that are more than 5.5 feet tall. So generally, we plan for our screening to cover 6 feet, especially in these very front-facing locations.
you list mechanical louvers on your elevation materials, but where are they?
That is a good question. We have several of them. So the garage mechanical, probably the largest ones, are where your question is?
I guess. I mean, I
Yeah.
couldn't find them noted anywhere in the elevation, so I wasn't sure.
Gotcha.
Are we
Okay.
looking at, is there parts of the garage that are open? Are there?
Yeah, the major sized louvers would be at the garage, and so those, because of the way the garage faces, any ones that were on the facade would be in the lowest level of volume along JPA in the dark charcoal panel. And I apologize if we didn't specifically list those particular locations. We're probably still honing in on
But those
where they
are walkout units there, right?
There are walkout units there. There are a couple pieces of facade that where there's a break or a mechanical room. And if we
Okay.
did exhaust the garage from the sidewall, that would be the location.
So it'd be kind of in between some of those units that you might be.
It would be, if there's space on the wall. What's more likely is the garage is actually ventilated vertically because it's mostly buried, in which case there'd be an area well, and then that, that grate that's horizontal and it's coming up that way. The western half of the garage would be ventilated that way because it has to be. And then if in these zones, particularly where we don't have, a walk-up condition, we'd locate one of those area wells and sort of have that exhaust happen from that arrangement.
So for the faux masonry, what type of control joints do you need for those? How often are we going to see something that's like a break in the masonry pattern?
Right. So typically, if you could go back to elevations potentially, really it's going to be probably at 20-ish foot intervals.
Okay.
And we'd locate those, strategically with the window pattern. So in the charcoal brick there, you can see that there's not huge zones of that. There are the sidewalls that end up being about 60 or 65 feet total. So each of those would have a strategic vertical joint. Probably two or three of them amongst that longest facade that's 60 feet. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yes. And I guess with the brick, you can wrap all your details with it, so it looks like it's a solid.
Yeah. In fact, compared to 4-inch masonry with cavity wall, the brick joints here are easier to deal with by a long shot. Is part of the reason why it's there's less labor in it, but they're easier, less often, and less visible.
But I guess all your corner conditions are going to look like a full brick.
Yeah, if you go, we had that one image where it comes around the corner. The corners do look pretty good, and that was a concern of ours, with this stove brick panel, and has it come far enough to convey actual corners, so it looks, it appears as a 4-inch brick.
I guess those each brick isn't like stuck on the building. Is it like a sheet applied, or how does that?
Yeah, it's kind of a sheet applied. The exact mechanics of the field installation, I'm a little less, so there's an in-factory version of it too, but the field applied version, I'm still looking for the exact specifics of how they do that. All I know is that it is field applied, and I know what the end product looks like per the images that were conveyed. So to answer your question, I don't think it's one at a time, no.
Yeah.
I think it's more efficient than that out in the field.
Okay. I guess the next question actually is for staff. So you guys have located streetlights around the building. We've changed our lighting standards. Are we going to get new city streetlights that are 3,000 Kelvin instead of being 4,000? Staff, can we? Maybe that's not. Maybe you guys don't know, but I guess it would be great if we could do that. Maybe start every time we put in some new poles. They're actually the right color.
I know they're changing Dominion Power lights. I don't know.
Okay. And at one point, I thought the Belmont Bridge lights were going to become the new city standard, but I don't know if that's the case either.
I know they were developing the standards and design manual, how many years ago?
Yeah.
I urged them to incorporate something relative to the color temperature and all that, and but I was told, well, but you only worry about design control. So
They're about to do a big.
I wasn't successful getting that.
Well, and that's another thing. I've actually got a separate topic. I'll send an email about that. The new LED lights that they have put in are like staring at the surface of the sun. So
Where's that?
there's been a couple of replacements around town where Dominion's lights have burnt out. But that has nothing to do with this project, so I'll send an email on that. I'm sorry. I have exhausted my very long list of questions. Sorry about that, guys.
Good question. Please.
Just to recap on one of Carl's questions there, when you were talking about the sort of dark brick and the patterns that you had there, you have like a soldier coursing on each floor. You have that thing between windows. Were you saying those might go away?
Well, they'll be executed a little differently than those previous renderings. As I mentioned, we were giving ourselves flexibility and conveying an overall design aesthetic back in the PUD process, and that's when those images are from. Through the site plan process here, as we're going through, we will submit updated elevations of those areas. Our intention would be to have some level of depth in between the windows, for example, as generally outlined in those renderings. I couldn't say for sure how that exactly is executed. This product is, the specifics of that on this product, we want it to be that way, but can it be executed similar to the depth on the inboard of the joint detail in the Champagne? We need to get into, can we convey that thickness change?
I see.
With the efficiency of having one, solid wall behind that and not altering the exterior wall structure. So.
What about the soldier coursing? Like that's at the same depth, right? But it's obviously a change in pattern. Wouldn't be the
It's
same.
change in pattern, yep. And so it would be, if we can convey it with depth, we would. And in any instance, it would be turned and soldiered and represented that way at the spots where we've done that.
Yep.
It does appear in some zoomed in renderings as with that soldier course. On this particular elevation, you don't get into that level of depth there yet. So. But through the site plan review process, I believe we will be continually submitting elevations at each of the iterations of site plan. So
Okay.
that elevation, I guess what I'm saying to answer your question in a roundabout way, can be updated as we go to clarify what we're doing.
Sure. Okay. Other than that, I only have a couple pretty small things. One, you note in your material selection that you're using U-shaped bike racks. I think that's good. Staple-shaped bike racks are useful. Your renderings have wave-shaped bike racks,
Yes.
which are recommended against in our bike path
Yep.
master plan.
We would be happy to change those to the recommended, and what we've technically said here, apologize for the contradiction. Again, the renderings were somewhat aspirational, and
Yep.
sometimes you take liberties with the aesthetic of a bike rack, but
I
the
know you
function.
architects love the look of wave-shaped bike racks.
That's
Just
right.
terrible for
They do
parking
look good,
bikes.
but as a biker, I can attest they do not function very well, especially if you're in a hurry.
Cool. The only other thing I'd say, if you could switch to page 15 on this, overall, and I was looking largely at, or focusing largely on how you, your streetscape, how you interact with the public realm, how you define the private and public realm. I think you did a pretty good job on that overall.
Thank you.
I do have one minor comment here, take it or leave it. I'm not going to make it a condition or anything, but where you have these sort of private porches for these walk-up units, I think it would be helpful for defining that private realm if you had a little ledge kind of wall, like a rectangular wall. I mean, you have this poor woman sitting on the floor. That could also serve as a bench for her to sit on.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I mean, that is a level of detail we didn't necessarily define in these renderings. So what your suggestion would be, rather than a railing, like a privacy railing with a gate, but more of a wall, a built wall condition. Is that?
I think a gate would also serve that purpose of defining the space. Here you don't have anything, so
Right.
having anything to define it,
Yeah.
I do think a wall would be more practical.
Sure.
Mainly this poor woman, she's sitting on the floor here.
Yeah, I mean, you do see walk-ups around that have sort of two walls, two of the three sides as a level of privacy. What you're not, so your comment's not really security related, it is defining of the space related, right? Okay, and I agree. I mean, these are pretty public-facing, and I think we want to do contextually the best version of them. They do change a little bit as you march around the building, so the ones on Emmett are a little different than the ones on JPA. They're also at different heights as they go. So I think through the site plan review process, we did probably add a few things like this. And so I think you'll see that come through in those with staff, with those drawing sets.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bill, what you got?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to provide a bit of respite in this murder board here. I don't really have any significant questions.
Thank you for responding to the public concerns. I see a lot of changes and improvements. I did have a question, but I've lost it in the wash. Perhaps it will come back. Thank you.
Come back to you. Ms. Redker, what you got?
Hello. I haven't been on some of the previous versions of these sessions. My first thought was the reflectivity of the windows, and that may have already been addressed through some other forum. And that's also in renderings that may need to be updated. Has that been discussed?
Thank you, Commissioner, for the question. We haven't gotten into the specifics of that. It is in the renderings depicted sort of in a very reflective way. One of the reasons that would be was we wanted to sort of just make that, our first pass, I'll just be honest, our first pass of renderings, they were quite blue. And one of the ways to make the windows not so flashy and distracting is to change that and make them more gray. So that was a little bit, the lighting, of course, changes all of this. But I do think that, we haven't specified exact reflectivity at this point, but if there is a, similar to lighting temperature, if there is something that is valuable to convey from this body through the ERB, that we'd love to know that.
Does the ARB have a? Sorry. Yeah, I don't know if that's already been.
It's, what we learn in the BARs, there's probably 50 different numbers you can apply to glass. Which one do you want to use? But the one that we've settled on, and right or wrong, is VLT, visible light transmission, and as a percentage. And so 100% being absolutely clear, and sort of set clear glass was the term we used, but not really having a word for it. So anything that's 70% or higher is considered clear. excuse me, clear glass. That's primarily important in a commercial setting, like on the mall. We want that visibility through into the storefronts. There's a note in the drawings about using clear glass, and that's something I would check with the construction drawings came in. The question then gets into when you start going up into residential space. So, for example, I've never looked at the VLT of a glass on residential windows, but you all can. It is in your purview to request a certain level, even a certain color. I think an example. A good example would be the Dairy Central, where now that front building was reviewed by the BAR and the back of the residential was reviewed as an entrance corridor project. But there are, on that east end, there's the glazed cube, I call it, that has some variation. I think we went as low as 62%, and there was some tinting of that glass allowed so that it didn't end up looking like a big flash bulb. But the fact that they've specified they'll be using clear glass, that sort of hits the threshold for me. But from a design side of things, if you all have some additional views on that, it's in your purview to ask about.
Thank you for clarifying that, Jeff. Especially at the ground plane, I think this is where this is most important. It's perhaps less applicable to the upper levels. So I would say at the walk-ups there where you see in the 2-story, but then even more applicable would be the common area spaces during the major entries where we do actually have storefront glazing. So that I think is, and we did note the clear glazing specifically in this presentation at those areas of the ground plane.
Yeah.
So call it the first 2 stories.
Yeah, I guess I was concerned, some of the renderings, when you're looking at it farther away, it does have that office. I mean, I think the massing is great. I think, I know there's been a lot of work to try to break down the amount of units getting kind of put on that site. So I guess I was just asking for the upper levels, because I know there's a privacy thing, but also you don't want it to, with the metallic paneling, be too office building, like too.
That's right. Yeah, and one of the things we often come into play is these are residential units, right? Many of these windows are bedrooms, and so there are shades. Those shades are closed, and to depict the building as never having a shade closed behind a window would not be realistic, honestly. And so sometimes, especially in night renderings, we're able to turn some windows with shades and some not, so you can sort of see it both ways, especially when that is more apparent in a dusk type of light condition.
So what are you thinking for those walk-up units? I'm curious, because I can see it going both ways. I do think just like the whole, especially without defining it, but like the sidewalk just turns right into their living room is a bit weird, right? So what do you think, what do you plan for glass?
Yeah, completely clear glass actually isn't good from a safety perspective, but we're not going to frost that glass or do anything like that. That would feel very non-residential as a walk-up. We want these to feel residential. The side lights there would have pretty maneuverable shades on each of those, and then sometimes even the door does have those in a super public situation, just because you need that level of privacy on the inside. So that doesn't really speak to the glass itself, but it speaks to the functionality and operations of those walk-up units. So we do a lot of those. Most of the time, it's controlled on the inside by the resident with, call it a different type of shade than would exist on level 7 of the building, for instance.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, I guess my only comment on the EFS, the materials, is the sample. This looks better on paper and in the rendering than the actual sample. Yeah. And maybe it's just like you were saying, the color of the grout is not as great here.
Yes, I would thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner. I would like to hammer that point home. The grout color really matters in this.
Yeah.
I think it matters in all masonry that I do. I trend towards mortar color being close or complementary to the actual clay or other masonry product. In this case, it's far better depicted our sample maker wasn't able to get the grout nearly dark enough, or for that matter, have some variation in that grout so that it looks real. And though I think hopefully in the images I've conveyed on the screen and the digital version of the material sample board, it does come across that way, so.
Yeah, it does look better. And I think I had one more question, which again might be before my time, so you can just say it's already been decided. But on the bike lane, what's going on in terms of the JPA bike lane versus this bike lane coming into the sidewalk? I mean, it looks fine.
Yeah.
This is not an aesthetic thing. I just
Sure.
wondered what's going on with this city and the development in terms of bringing it into the sidewalk and then out just for that one project?
Yeah, I can speak to just
Yeah.
why it's like that most generally, and then the nuances of it. There is a site plan, sheet number, when we get to one that's larger, so you can see this. But just more generally, the framework is off-street bike facilities. So we're taking the curb, coming out with it, and that bike lane where it's mostly striped today becomes a raised curb. And then what we wanted to do in most cases, best practice, is locate the tree green zone in between there and the sidewalk for a point of delineation for different users. Otherwise, you have bikes coming up on people on foot. So that is generally the framework. It does, to your point, you've noticed it does swing in and out. One of the places it swings in and they join on the east side on JPA would be the spot where the new bus stop, like we upgraded, bus facility would be placed. Right now there's just a bus sign there. We understand through the transit agency that that needs to be enhanced. So that is one instance where we swing it to make sure that the bike lane comes behind that transit facility, as is like the best practice in all these urban projects to do it that way. There are a couple other instances where we have curb cuts, and one came up actually in the first round of site plan review just last week, where I think it was along actually Stadium on the west side. It made more sense to combine them, and it was a better usage of space if they did combine for a little while and stayed consistently that way as to not weave in and out too much. And then what we do there is still do the tree planting canopy, but we do it a little deeper off the curb, which actually helps us probably start with a little bit larger tree than we otherwise would have. So big picture goal, have these facilities for each user and have, good solid boulevard trees in the right of way here.
Okay, I think I'm good. Oh wait, one more thing. In terms of the prow, is that still the prow versus the flush reveal? That's still kind of up in the air, or is it more of a dimension? Because I like on the renderings myself, how the prow is. There's a nice shadow line. So
Right.
good with that. I'm just wondering, what's the status? Are you still playing with that?
I think we're open to it being outboard or inboard. I think actually, to your point, Commissioner, it creates a shadow line either way. I don't know which one is particularly better, but I think it'll come down to the best way to detail each of those joints. What we wanted to convey here is just the overall color texture in the varying three colors, and then what those look like in the general jointing pattern. Like I said, we're not overly committed to an outboard or inboard joint detail. It may be dictated by the contractor working with us to detail the building. So
Yeah, I would just hope that it remains at least what's shown here in terms of just the shadow line. It doesn't get too squished and flat looking.
okay, noted. Yeah, thank you. That is the best version of the exterior facade. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I had a couple brief questions. First one, I've noticed Fred is here. I wanted to have clarification of what Wolf Ackerman's role is in this project.
Oh, thank you. Happy to clarify that. We have a design team, which includes Wolf Ackerberg. Fred has been consulting as our local architect on the project all along. We also have Timmons as our civil civil engineer, and they've been active on the project the entirety of it as well. And then our landscape architect, who knows our program, and primarily the scope of that service is actually inside the building, in the courtyards and the roof. And that person is AJC. It's a design firm from Atlanta. So, so that's primarily the consultant team, if that's the question, for this project. Obviously, structural engineers, mechanical engineers as well.
And can you just, I know it's a large development, can you confirm the current bed count?
Current bed count, I will answer that in a second. We will do that. It was specified in the PUD, and so I want to make sure that both the dwelling units and the bed count there was a max range given in the PUD, and
So just a rough ballpark? I'm
Yeah,
just
actually-
using it more for just context of scale and the amount of sort of
Yeah.
inhabitants will be having the lived
Sure.
experience of being in this building.
Okay, so less of a technical question, more of a
Yeah,
scope
yeah,
of
just
the
put
question.
it could be
Sure.
in the ballpark. It's not going to be,
So 550 DUs was what was set in the PUD, so we're in the 500 range for dwelling units, and we're in the 1,200 bed range.
okay, thank you.
Again, those aren't technical numbers to the PUD, just to give that caveat. So.
Okay, and then I've noticed on page 55, I don't know if Patrick can go there, there's a dusk rendering, the Verve signage, it appears to be two of them, it appears to be non-illuminated in the dusk rendering. I wanted to confirm whether the intent was to have it to be non-illuminated, or,
This is page 51, I think, so go more
sorry,
if you can.
is it- yeah,
I
55.
added 4 pages here, that's why we're off, but. I want to go the other way, I believe. So 55 will be in the lower right-hand corner.
yeah. Yeah, so if you look at
This is the one.
the center of the image where the gap is, there's a prominent Verve sign. I was just curious what the design intent was along that signage.
Thank you, Commissioner, for noting that. It's not lit in this particular rendition, and signage, I believe, is noted here as a thing to be defined at a later date in terms of its size and its illumination. I couldn't tell you for sure if we were going to illuminate that right now. It is over the major entry at, call it floor line 3. That's a 2-story volume there at the main entry. I think there will be a sign in that vicinity, but I think there is a process here to articulate that. But that said, if you have thoughts on it right now pertaining to the role of ERB, we'd be happy to
It's
understand.
above the height of the second floor windowsills, which, at least in our old code, was not allowed. So I think that sign can't be there anyways. It has to
Gotcha.
come down
It would just move down
a
to
floor.
the next.
In other words, with your dictation of height on that second floor storefront window, there wouldn't be space for that sign necessarily.
It's, the regulation is that it has to be below the sill of the second floor windows.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for that clarification. We will take that back and apportion signage.
Did I misspeak?
Yeah, it's in the staff report that any signage shown is,
Right, yeah.
yeah, has to, meet the sign ordinance, and
Okay, great.
it's a separate permit, so it's just excluded.
Okay.
But if there were, entrance corridor signage can be illuminated, but if there's, you all have purview over, you can't say you cannot have a sign, but if there's something related to illuminating or things like that, you certainly can address lighting relative to signs if you want to put something in the conditions. So I don't want to close the door on it if there's a concern about lights.
Can't make them go back to the old Verve logo. It's so much better.
Oh, they're updated. I understand what you're saying. Well, if there is anything you want us to take as a note here tonight on that, but we will comply, of course, with the signage ordinance, and particularly this rendering doesn't depict compliance with that, so we'll make that alteration.
So we talked a bit about the EFIS, which is, a disappointing sort of development, I think, just from a durability standpoint and just the general character that's being presented on significant development. Just looking at Stowe's sort of recommendations on maintenance, it seems like inspection and sort of regular repair and need resurfacing is not uncommon. What roof infrastructure is being proposed in order to maintain these significant facades, and will those pieces of infrastructure be visible that aren't currently shown in these renderings?
Did you say infrastructure? Sorry.
Yeah, we have a davit system, or how would one go about servicing this facade?
Oh, I'm sorry. Operationally, how does the facade get, like, for instance, if it was true masonry brick, the tucking point?
Yeah, or clean the windows, or how would you
Gotcha.
maintain this?
Yeah, there's going to be a davit system. So first and foremost, window cleaning is much more often than any of this, but there would be roof anchors on the top, and that's how these buildings are serviced. There's a roof anchor, and then there is a structure that's hung off the side of the building from that for window washing.
So that's a portable system, so it'll collapse, so it won't be visible.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be the same way that any maintenance issues with the envelope of the building would be dealt with if they came up, or if there was a way down the line in the lifespan of the building, if there was a resurfacing of the exterior materials, likely it would be done that way as well. Scaffolding, only gets used so high, and so that's why these methods would be done operationally for that.
Okay. And then the next part of my comments, I think are, I'm new, this is my third month of this, and I'm a non-voting commissioner member, but I also sort of represent, a significant neighbor to this project. And I'm also aware of sort of your other neighbors, the residential neighbors in this area, with their sort of concerns. And so, looking for guiding principles on this process, I know there's the 2011 guidelines which have been brought up for the entrance corridor, and, I took away this, the purpose of them, these are quotes, the intent of these guidelines and the review process is to ensure a quality of development compatible with the city's historic, architectural, and cultural resources. And so I just made a note of that. And then, interestingly enough, given that this is a stone's throw from a unique site, which is the lawn, which is on the UNESCO World Heritage Site, and they define that as the World Heritage is the designation for places on Earth that are outstanding universal value to humanity, and as such have been inscribed on the World Heritage List to be protected for future generations to appreciate and enjoy. And so, coming out of that, the way I kind of weave that into this is when I was reviewing the materials this past week, looking at the chapter 1 of the checklist that went through that was reviewed at the city, there was an item, I think it was the final one of the chapter 1 of the checklist, that respect and enhance Charlottesville's character. And the response from the development team was that the building design is of a contemporary nature and does not attempt to be an imitator of a traditional architectural style. It's a unique design that's not lifted from external vernacular sources. And Patrick, I don't know if you could kindly pull up that website that shows it's just from Subtext's project's website. Again, I was just trying to get my head wrapped around this, and the idea that it's not lifted from external vernacular sources. And vernacular, my understanding, is an architectural concern with domestic and functional rather than public or monumental buildings. And I sort of scrolled through the body of work that sort of is the verve, and I think of this adjacency to a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I think about our 2011 entrance corridor design guidelines with the intent of trying to acknowledge Charlottesville as a unique place, a place that we as residents are proud of. It's a place that has housing issues which are significant, mainly because there's a desire for people to be here. And I have a hard time connecting the dots of sort of meeting the intent of the design guidelines, seeing the context of the Verve buildings across the country. It's one, I guess, maybe I'm at a loss to figure out how this building represents sort of what the intent that this community set forth in previous years, which may or may not change in the future. Also acknowledge the significance of adjacency to the lawn and to UVA, which is the only higher education UNESCO World Heritage Site in this continent, or on this continent. And it's more of a question, I think, for commissioners and as a community, as we have a new zoning ordinance, where do we know we need to meet housing, and density is good, and I think you guys have a great site plan. I think the amenities you bring at the street level are great. With the scale, 1,200 people, I think Johnson Village has 1,400 people in it, so to think that this building has a capacity of whole neighborhoods in this town, and their lived experience. And I understand the economics are challenging with the building materials and in this market, but with it, I just wonder the concept of stewardship, and that we as this commission are reviewing projects that will more likely impact future generations than the generation that, the lived experience we are currently having in Charlottesville. And again, I'm trying to connect the dots here, and I'm struggling. And as a, an associate university architect at UVA, I'm no stranger to reviews and oversight, both here locally, but also at the state level, and attempts to try to address the complexity of construction and cost and new program typologies and new scale, but making them so that they kind of, again, embrace that sort of stewardship mindset. And so, again, it's not an easy task. This is a great site with its proximity. I think affords a great opportunity. I think Subtech's commitment to the idea of bigger projects that are more proximate, I think, are definitely preferable over doing smaller, scattered, sprawling periphery projects. And so I think but with it comes this crux, this challenge, and again, I don't know if I have a guidance on it, and I don't have a vote on it, but I just felt compelled as a resident and as an architect and representing the university community just to acknowledge it. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. The only thing I'll add is yes, this is challenging work in this work. There's a lot of buildings, there's a lot of square footage that gets built. Personally, I try to do it well. These are fabric buildings. We try to do them well. We don't have the budget to execute really good brick details all the way through a project. It doesn't exist. In most cases, we try to do it where possible, and find the opportunities to do it. And so sometimes it's, doing the work well is hitting the sweet spot of what you can do and what's in budget, and making sure, at the foremost, that all the things particularly related to the exterior, to the right of way, are being done as well as possible. So.
And Mike, it's the ERB guidelines are on my list of things that need to be updated, and hopefully before I die of old age, we'll get to it. But your question is a good one, and it's why I included the images of buildings around Charlottesville. We're going from we would see monumental scale buildings occasionally, but I think we're going to see them a little bit more regularly. And what is it that we're trying to emulate? And I don't, that's why I said, I look, like the hospital, some really fantastic, the architecture's very modern, contemporary. Then we have other places, it's brick and trim. I don't know how to answer the question architecturally. And I'm not sure that the guidelines even, in their purest form ultimately it comes down to that subjective, do we like this or not? And I don't know how to answer that question. Where I'm sort of stuck, and you maybe explain my process a little bit, is that, this is maybe the 6th time that the elevations, because I went back and looked at the prior submittals that went to Planning Commission and City Council, and it hasn't changed significantly except for that opening as you come down M Street. So we've sort of looked at this, and I have to assume some level of acceptance from the parties that have been reviewing it. So when I start to look at it, I'm not sure what my canvas is. That's some of, again, the difficulty of an entrance corridor project versus something we've reviewed at the BAR. But if I can, I think just then to step back, the one thing I think is still lingering out there is, and Ms. Rutger, got it. The idea of these reveal lines, they do, present a transition of colors, and whether that transition in there was due to shadow or shade or to, does the width of that matter, does that, and I think if there's, I'm not sure how to answer that. Carl and I earlier today talked about the code building, and it's got the, there's fins in between the bricks that sort of break up that plane. If there is something you would prefer to see stylistically, architecturally, I'd like to express it, or I'd like you all to express it, or if there's, I just want to make sure we don't go and leave this sort of in 2.5 years from now when building construction drawings come in, we're all trying to remember what it was that we were thinking as far as those lines are concerned. I think that's the biggest detail tonight. I want to make sure that we get right. And I did want to say, Rory, your confidence with design is evolving and maturing, and I thank you again for your input tonight. So, is there anything I can help with? Answer.
Right, let's be, before we begin talking amongst ourselves, are there any more questions? You've got one question?
I do. I remember what I was going to ask you. There are 8 conditions recommended in the packet from staff. Do you have concerns on those issues? Do you see any problems that we should be thinking about?
We did. Thank you for asking. I didn't get to that. I meant to. Of the 8 conditions there, we don't have major concerns over any of them. You know, the last 2 I think are pertaining to EFS. I think it sounds like needs to be some level of specificity with those. So I would withhold, complete agreement on all 8 because I understand that some of these, for instance, the last one, it just says clarification needed. We're just talking about that joint detail. The one above that, I'll just speak to that one quickly since we have the opportunity. The EFS material will be a Stowe product as specified. It notes a durable synthetic material which is mechanically fastened over appropriate drainage. I think we already got into that. We do not have a problem with that one. But I would, if there's modifications to any of these, we'd want to re-comment on that, I suppose. So, but majorly the other ones, the screening on the utility boxes, rooftop mechanical screening, the exterior lighting, meters and panel boxes screening, and then the signs thing we reviewed, no major concerns with those, or with planting variation if that would come up as well.
Mr. Warner? Am I correct that number 8 is not to us, but to as part of the site plan process?
Was it the joint?
No, I have bullets, not numbers. So which one?
The last
Joint question.
Last bullet in your recommendation, the EFS,
So, yeah, that was sort of a placeholder, as in, if you want to, you can, the second one up, that's the identical from 2005 JPA. So if you all wanted to insert something, I put that in there as sort of a mnemonic device, but otherwise, if you've got nothing to add, then.
Thank you.
So I'd say if you wanted to refer to them on the staff report, page 5 and 6, and exclude one or the other, rather than reading them all, that would be up to you, but that's would work for me.
all right, any more questions before we talk about this? All right, Mr. Schwartz, why don't you kick us off?
Start? Okay. So when this first came to us, or come to us multiple times, you've kind of won us over with some really beautiful renderings. And I remember the discussion last time we saw you guys, it was about a metal panel building in masonry, which has become all EFS. The renderings still say metal panel building with masonry. And they show some very clear, what look like protruded joint details that look like metal extrusions. You've mentioned that the faux brick, you're going to try and keep the details at the lower levels, but you'll probably get rid of them at the upper levels. We don't really know what this joint detail is going to be. Because this is a 12-story building, and because materials are important, and going back to our guidelines, we've got actually highlighted a couple of these. Choose materials that offer texture and avoid monotonous surfaces. You're trying to get rid of the monotonous surface. I get that. You're doing that with a lot of color. You are use variation of materials, textures, patterns, and colors, and details. Details being the key word to break down the mass and scale of the building. use massing reduction techniques of articulated base, water table, string courses, cornices, material changes, and patterns and fenestration to reduce the apparent height of a large building. Scrolling down, there's a whole page on details in our guidelines. Architectural details are important tools to create human scale and architectural character. Techniques include highlighting foundations, lintels, sills, and cornices with contrasting materials and breaking up the mass of the building with bands at floor levels, projections at entries. Use articulated elements such as cornices, belt courses, water tables, bay divisions, variations in wall plane, and roof features to create designs of interest. My whole point being, as much as I don't like our guidelines for ARB, or as kind of foggy as they are, there's a lot about details. And I think you need to actually show us what details you want to use. I have kind of fallen in love with your renderings, but when you tell me that, well, these are just a guideline, and we're actually going to simplify them a bit, and they're not really going to be this, I can't, I don't think I have enough anymore to go on to approve this. So I can say, I think you're moving in a good direction as far as the building is concerned, but I'd like you to actually figure out what you want to do with the skin of the building and then tell us so that we can okay it or not. I do think your renderings show a lot of richness that when you tell me that you're gonna, take the deep details off of the masonry, that worries me, because again, this is going to be the biggest building in Charlottesville and the tallest building in Charlottesville, at least for a little while, probably for longer. And we've messed up a couple times with big buildings. The Standard on West Main looked fine on paper, and the construction of it is terrible. The way it was finished was terrible. And now you're kind of telling us that you're going to figure out as you go and do this EFIS building, 100% EFIS. I'm worried about the many ways it could go wrong. Looking on Stowe's website, I was feeling okay about this brick. That sample, it scares me. It really scares me. You're going to have to really convince me that that's going to do all the detailing that you say it will. And I'm not sure if you've got another project that you've done that you've used this material that has all the ins and outs of the brick. I am worried about EFIS can't touch the ground, so what are you guys going to do when the brick comes near the ground? How are you going to disguise the fact that it's kind of floating right there? Yeah, so a whole bunch of issues. I'd like to see some details to understand it. Some of the conditions I was going to add, if I was going to approve this tonight, but I think I would personally suggest that you guys ask for a deferral unless everybody else wants to approve it. Get up to those conditions. So obviously you do need to find a way to screen that utility box. I guess you can work with Jeff on that. But rooftop lights, this is a little bit of just CYA, is that there'll be no lights greater than 1,600 lumens where the light source is visible from beyond the property line. And any building mounted lights should be shielded and directed so as to only light the surface of the building and not shine out from the building. Again, this is something that we ran into with some of the buildings on West Main Street. They have, you're showing shielded lights on your facade, which is great, but just to make sure that stays that way, because some of the buildings on West Main, we actually had to go through and get the developer to reduce the brightness of those lights because they were creating some serious glare issues to people on the street. So just to prevent that entirely, then the other CYA thing is any appreciable loss of canopy trees from the depictions presented in this application, regardless of cause, should require review by the ERB. And I'm saying that because things happen during the site plan process. Utilities end up in places that we don't expect them. So it's, make sure you guys have that figured out before you promise us that this building's gonna be ringed with street trees. So yeah, those are my two CYA things to add to the conditions, but tonight I don't think I'm prepared to approve this without some more detail on what you guys want to do with the building skin. And just beg you to find something else other than the fake brick. Or do something to convince me that it's actually gonna do what you think it's gonna do.
Yeah, honestly, I don't really disagree with Carl on the fact that these renderings do appear to be something a little bit different from the cladding that we've been presented tonight. I think my view of a COA in general is that what matters to me and ultimately to most of the ERB guidelines is how that building interfaces with the public realm. And the cladding, while it's not, nothing, is a small piece of that. And I think they've done a good job of building a streetscape here. I think they've done a good job of design in the public realm. And while these aren't the cladding decisions that I would have made, even the renderings aren't the cladding decisions that I would have made. The guidelines also tell me that the cladding decisions, my preferences for how buildings should be clad and appear are wrong. I would say that Nashville building looked pretty good. The guidelines would call that a cheap imitation of the Jeffersonian architectural style, and says it's neither appropriate nor desirable. And, as far as I'm concerned, in reading that in the guidelines are essentially asking for buildings that are modern, that are different. Do I want buildings that are modern and different? Not really. Do I think it complies with the guidelines? I would have to vote to approve a COA.
I guess I would mirror a couple of Commissioner Stolzenberg's view on that. I would sort of put it in a more sweeping way of sort of my personal aesthetic preferences are the last thing that people of the city of Charlottesville want. Is for me to be making decisions based on my personal aesthetic preferences. To again sort of follow Commissioner Stolzenberg on this, acknowledging the gritty sort of the grittiness level of some of Commissioner Schwartz's concerns there, and my own sort of dubious relationship with EFS that has come from dreadful experience. I still think that, I'm not the builder, I'm not the architect, I'm not the engineer who's got to make sure that stuff doesn't fall off. That I would be inclined to grant the COA provided we had that solid consensus here.
Someone's looking at me. Hello, all. I taught design at UVA, and I don't feel qualified to talk about this. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know. I like the rendering. I think it makes sense. There's a lot of good in it. I hear Commissioner Schwartz's concerns. I trust them. I don't know the best way procedurally to address those concerns yet, but I'm interested in thoughts from staff on that. To Mr. Joy's concern about how to find a reasonable balance, which I think is the right question to be asking. I'm leaning somewhat on the comprehensive plan. We've got on page 24, Goal 7, entrance corridors. Ensure that the quality of development in Charlottesville's designated entrance corridor overlay districts is compatible with the city's requirements and standards, and with the adjacent neighborhood's historic, architectural, and cultural resources, while allowing for reuse of structures and evolution of uses in these areas. Which is, to me, it is about finding the right balance, which is going to be hard always, and hopefully easier when we have updated guidelines. Broadly, I support the vision here. I see its merit. I am concerned about the details, and I'm interested in how we can resolve those details.
I would agree. I'm not sure exactly on the procedures that we have available to us, the options available to us. I mean, as more on the architecture side, I know there's always the mock-ups, things that we're doing at the, where you actually get to see the materials, but that's probably so far down the road that it doesn't come to the planning, come before any of these bodies. Yeah, I don't know, I do like that the public realm has been worked out really well, even, it's in a valley, so it's hard to make those ground levels feel important enough, because of the topography. I feel like sometimes it feels like it's a little squashed, but I think that corner is really nice. Yeah, so my question is more just about the material, but generally, I think we need housing for students, and the density, the massing, I don't know if it could get much better. It's hard to push that all in there. It is sort of, I started to think of it as, I drove over there, and JPA has kind of two ends to it, and one end does have stores and more commercial space, and then one end is kind of a dead end into UVA, which all of a sudden becomes very historic and protected property. So I did, the market, all of the activity in the market seems like a very nice balance, because the students who live there are usually flowing the other way, and it kind of gives them, hopefully whatever retail happens there, would benefit those, coming over to the historic the side of UVA. So I support it. I don't know what we can do about the material, the evolution of what happens with the material. So, but in general, I think we do need to have these more, proximate student housing to really help us with our affordability issues.
Mr. Joy.
Well, again, as I mentioned, I'm a non-voting member. Again, my concerns, I think, are less, again, the PUD's been approved. It's, I think, the general massing and the nature of the development, the density of the development. Again, I think that ship has sailed. I just keep asking myself, I feel like we're kind of closer to this development discourse than an average citizen of Charlottesville. So if someone came up to me, I'm like, well, why did the verb end up looking that way? And I'd be like, I think it worked in West Lafayette. It's hard. I would have a hard time imparting after seeing the presentation, like why this is best for this prominent site in Charlottesville and for the students of UVA. Like I would have a hard time explaining other than it's expensive to build here, and we wanted brick, but this is the best we could do. I mean, I think there's an opportunity for ingenuity and stewardship, and that's kind of what I was touching on. And it's hard for me to catch the thread of what would make the Verve at this site the best rendition of what it could be, even with the limitations. I think with limitations come design opportunity, and come for, if anything, you kind of get more to the core of what would make a place great. And that part, and seeing the samples, I just concur with everyone here. This is a really, it's hard to look at that board. And I mean, when the brick looks like it's made from board, I mean, like a chipboard, that's a tough one. So I understand the challenge you guys are in. So I don't think it's anything responsible with the architect. I know we're in an unprecedented kind of building environment, so it's a design issue. And again, I'd be hard to advocate in future years to be like, no, that's the best it could be, because I don't know if I feel I've been convinced yet.
So this has been approved. The PUD has been approved. So something's going to get built here. What gives me, I hear John Fink yelling in my ear, noble materials, and I echo just about everything Carl kind of walked you guys through. A little more detail, a little more specificity would give me would less heartburn. If I had to vote today, I would vote not to approve the COA. So let's do this, just to give the developers a chance to think about whether they want to continue with the vote or whether they want to defer. Let's do a straw vote. Who is comfortable with the COA tonight? You first raise your hand. So 2,
Maybe.
3.
If it's deferred, we would see.
If it's deferred, Ms. Creasy, don't let me step out of
Just-
legal. constraints here. If it's deferred, they would have an opportunity to address a lot of the detailed concerns that Mr. Schwartz raised, and that Mr. Joy is also raised. But that's up to them. We can't.
Yeah.
We can vote. We can vote up or down, or they can opt to come back to us next month. Or am I in bounds here, Mr. Creasy?
Right, I mean, they can choose to defer. ERB applications don't have the same timeframes that others do, so you all could vote for the deferral, but they could come back with exactly the same materials, so it probably would make sense to have some dialogue on that if, with the applicant as to what would make sense.
What makes sense to you guys?
Well, I'll invite Dylan with Subtext to come up. We hadn't necessarily explicitly planned for that exact scenario, but do you want to speak to a deferral and a timeline? I would say that we do have time through the site plan review process potentially for that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we are open to deferring. I would assume that means next month. But I mean, yeah, we would be happy to defer and come back with more details for you guys.
Would you prefer next month? It's not necessarily next month.
Yeah, it's, I mean, you all requesting a deferral kind of puts the ball in your court. And the challenge is that you would then have to get something back to us. And I can tell you the next 2 weeks of my life are going to be chaos, so I won't promise you anything as far as, if you got even something to us. So, but by their requesting deferral, it becomes their decision when to bring it back.
And if we were to vote for a deferral, is that automatic?
I don't.
I don't think we get to do that.
I'd rather.
Yeah, we would, I mean, generally, we would let them know timeframes of when we would need materials back, and if those materials, once those are received by Jeff, are not comprehensive enough, we would work with them to get to an agenda that makes sense.
Right.
And can I understand what you guys are looking for out of a deferral? Are you looking for renderings with EFS?
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah. Or maybe just to select, if we could select like 1 or 2 renderings, and again, look at the sort of shadow line joints, however the metallic, might look. I don't know if there's opportunity to do some real brick just around like the immediate entrance, but just kind of, I think the sample board was a sad, kind of brought us down. So if there's a way to like take a rendering and just show a corner, or maybe even as you were showing the existing buildings, we could focus more on looking at the, like, taking some photos of those more in detail. Or at least that's what I'm thinking.
I mean, I do want to see a full height view. If you guys are going to be reducing the details in the brick, I want to know what you're planning on reducing it down to. And then, yeah, understanding what this is going to look like if it's, because it still looks like there's dark metal strips for all these reveals, and understanding what that's going to look like if it's just ephes as a little depression, or if it's a protrusion, or and is that going to be painted a different color, or is that going to be, just understanding what you guys want to do with that.
Sure. Yeah, and so I think I understand what you're looking for in a future version of this meeting with a deferral, and that I'll summarize kind of in 2 pieces. Anywhere where we have, and sort of call it a older rendering, where that can be updated and what we're really proposing in detail is depicted, and then probably some additional information on how those particular things you brought up tonight and we spoke on, how those are actually detailed out. What I understand you're not necessarily asking for is specific specified materials at this time, but a level of detail with the particular areas of emphasis from tonight. So I think it's twofold. It's updated graphic illustrations on the things talked about, but then additional content on details, if I'm summarizing that correctly.
Yeah.
Is that what you wanted?
Yeah, and I mean, even you know, like a section showing the brick that maybe you don't even have to show us the guts of what's behind the wall, but just to know, like, it's gonna stick out an inch, it's gonna stick out a 3/4, it's not gonna stick out at all, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think a key here is the details around materiality
Yeah.
depth for the major materials. You're not asking us to detail every canopy overhang or anything like that, but the major repeating instances of the major materials.
And I think, I mean, as a public process, we don't have any public here tonight, I don't think, but it would be good just to have for the record, as opposed to us, you know, accepting what they're saying, like, well, we're gonna do it this way and this way. It'd be good to actually have it all, so we can see it,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And again, I think we're all okay on the mass, and like, we don't need
Yes.
all 20 renderings, maybe one or two, because I know that takes a lot of time, so.
Correct, yeah.
You know,
we-
just like a corner and a little sample.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, we would highlight the areas of emphasis here and not repeat and overwork the other
Yeah.
areas as to reach a timeline for proper staff review. So when it comes back to the schedule, whether this is deferred to next month's, your May ERB meeting or thereafter, I would, you know, it'd have to work in the timeline that Missy and Jeff have outlined, so.
I just wanted to jump in, going back to, I thought, you know, that was a great point about having a record that could be referred to. In regards to the EFS, because if someone just downloads the PDF to the guidelines, just someone in the public, and they do a, you know, Control F, and they type in EFS, it explicitly says that the entrance corridor does not recommend EFS, and we're gonna sit there and put a stamp on a building that is top to bottom EFS at a highly sensitive site. Is there something in this packet that would be helpful to show something that EFS is from 2011 to EFS in 2024? It's again, I'm just trying to figure out, like, how would we save face with our neighbors?
I think what would be useful, so Jeff had started this with his proposed condition, talking about having the drainage plane and being a Stowe product, and I think we can probably elaborate that on that possibly, or maybe you guys could elaborate on it, however much you want to hold yourselves to certain detail standards, you know, with, again, the drainage plane, with the complete system, that sort of language. So that somehow we need to come up with a little bit of CYA language to go with a condition that says this is why this EFS is appropriate.
Yeah.
I'll just add to that, ideally, we would depict some details here, maybe even a sectional detail, that could allow you to provide that language that you were just talking about, so that that's at the meeting next month or the following month.
Okay. So what would the applicant like to do?
On behalf of the team, we're ready to defer this, yes.
Ms. Creasy, do we need to vote to accept their request to defer, or what do we do?
Yeah, we have a motion in the packet for that.
Yeah.
I move to accept the applicant's request to defer the entrance corridor certificate of appropriateness application for 100 Stadium Road, the Verve.
I'll second.
Ms. Creasy?
Mr. Solon Yates,
Aye.
Mr. Duranzia,
Aye.
Mr. Stolzenberg,
Aye.
Ms. Roker,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
and Mr. Mitchell.
And yes.
Okay.
All right, so we have decided to defer the application. Thank you. Hopefully, we can get the detail that we're looking for and move forward. Thanks. All right, I'm going to gavel us out of the ECRB, and we're back in the Planning Commission. Any other discussion from you commissioners?
I just wanted to note, we had a communication from Mr. Gaines, our city forester, about actions that we can take as a commission to address our, I'm losing the word, canopy issues,
Trees, yeah.
which I don't have a thorough analysis of that now, but it exists.
Good.
Read it.
Read it. Cool.
I feel like I don't know if I'm stepping back into the entrance corridor, but going to Jeff's comment about the guidelines, I was wondering, is there a rider that could be made or some addendum that could be a shorthand? I'm just thinking we're going to see a lot of development
We are.
in the future.
And we're already
Construction
hearing it,
costs
yeah.
are sky high. We're being asked to sort of look at a document that, again, doesn't reflect either necessarily what the aesthetic aspirations or the construction challenges. So I was curious if there was a vehicle that, without having to redo the whole thing, could there be an interim, something that could be put it available to the public to show that these sections are being investigated as potentially, I don't know.
Or even something along the lines of that, you know, contextually with the time and place of 2011, no one was happy with EFS, but some sort of statement about the technological, you know.
Well,
you know,
it's, I think, you know, there are only guidelines, so there's,
the guidelines, not commandments.
right, and so there's not a, I think as long as, you know, you're expressing a why or why not. But as far as the guidelines themselves, you know, the document itself, I have 3 sets that I work with. One for the Board of Architectural Review, the ADC guidelines, which we do, you know, ADC district and IPPs we need to tackle. We've been working on that for some time, and it's not great progress. Then we have the historic conservation districts, which are sort of the historic district light. Those have to be revised and updated, and then these have to be revised and updated. That then goes to council, who adopts these. So as far as an entire document, you know, revising it, council approve, you act with it. We have, certainly with the glass question, have adopted a kind of a memo of understanding what I don't
Clarification or something.
Right, a clarification. I personally, I find the entrance quota guidelines to be redundant, and in some places, I'm not even sure what it's trying to tell us.
Yes, yeah, it is.
And the other piece of this is the process, and I know I've said this before, but if something comes to the BAR and it's above a $350,000 project, that an applicant is required to have a preliminary discussion. And then it's just understood that there might be 3 or 4 meetings until we get to something. It's a completely different feel at the BAR meetings. It's a discussion, it's a dialogue. My sense has always been the entrance corridor projects are, I have to bring it to you all and you know, see but not heard kind of thing, and there's not a dialogue. And it does confuse applicants sometimes, because, I mean, for something of this size, I will tell you, I had a prior city attorney say, well, why can't they just do the construction drawings and bring them in? I was like, it doesn't work that way. So I think that as we start to see, and I think we will see more projects coming in entrance corridor, how we collaborate, how I collaborate with you all, and how you all collaborate with applicants, we have to figure that out. I call the BAR now, the BAR chairs, if I've got something, and I say, hey, what do you think of this? We'll sit down and around a table and talk about it, trying to figure out what that applicant needs. I'm somewhat intimidated by you all to bring something new, so because that just has not been the process in the past. So I think that's something we have to figure out. When I have a question, an applicant has a question, I end up trying to guess what you all may or may not want.
Well, Mr. Werner, as you recall, before COVID, we used to do that. It was nice.
I think before COVID, I came to you guys 3 times, so I don't know.
We sat at your desk and we talked about an
Well,
application.
you and I did. Well, yes,
Yeah.
yes. You and I, we talked about zoning and stuff, right? But there's a different level of formality in my interaction with you all that I do not. I have a very informal relationship with the BAR, but that comes because we meet every month and have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. You guys see me, once every 2 or 3 months. So that's something we need to fix. For example, there's the thing in the ordinance now where something, we can make some call on it, but it gets called up if someone on the ERB wants to see it. Well, how do I share it with you all to decide if you want to see it or not? We still have to figure that out.
Well, that's logistics on our end,
Right.
and the code as a whole has that, because there are fewer items that are mandated to come forward, but there are the opportunities when things come in to be able to share such that if there's that opportunity. We're still in the infancy of this code. The things that we have in now mostly are things that are legacy from the other code. And we haven't gotten in applications under the new code yet where that is going to be present. But yes, the code does note that we need to notify so that people are aware that those things are coming out. So we will be working through a process with that. But again, this old code, we're still working on the same path there, and we just don't do these as often. And it always seems to be a little bit bumpy.
And I think, Mike's questions about height, have come up in, even recently, because we do have places where historic district overlays with an entrance corridor, and an applicant was asking, well, which body's more likely to give me the full height? And I sort of pros and conned it a little bit with this, but we have an ordinance that's calling for, in some places, up to 13 stories. If it has design review, then there is the ability to reduce that height. Now, if something's been established by a decision of council, then that constrains you. But we are going to have conflicts where typically I would say, what's going on here? What's the spacing of this building? What's that typical setback? What's the cadence of development here? But now I have a 10-story building. I don't know what to base it on. So we're going to have conflicts that, the sort of the gallows humor is, well, they'll just appeal it to council and get it approved that way. So there are some sticky issues we have to resolve, and I'm not sure how to do that just yet.
Well, we'll
but we're
take
getting
it
there.
project by project,
Right.
Jeff. We'll
So
just,
right now,
we'll
right.
continue on the path that we have. The work to get the verb to you all in a form that could be understandable, there was a lot of behind-the-scenes work that Jeff put in to make that happen. And a lot of really good work. And, not everyone is going to see that, but, we've been through the process in the background to get things, all the parts of the puzzle were there, but they needed to be in such a format that one could follow.
I would look at the drawings, I'm like, I'm not sure where I am. And so just getting them, as I put it to them, help me help the ERB navigate this site. Because if they don't, if you can't see where they are. So yeah, we've come a long way, but I think some of the details, and that again gets to that, to what extent, there have been other EC projects where it's like, yeah, that's a great picture, I love it. We got into a lot of some construction detail tonight that I just have to hang out with you guys more often. That's all there is, and get to know you better.
I think this one, there were a lot of for me, it was just the fact that they were telling us it was going to be one thing and showing us something different.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was clear to you when you were preparing the application.
It was, as was going through, the masonry panels, I thought were masonry, then when it was, but, I mean, look at the building at 211-7 Ivy Road. It's got, sort of a panel construction to it. The Draftsman, it's got some, materials on there that, the Wendy's they just finished over here, it's got those metal clipped panels. In 20 years, when someone, drives a truck through it and they have to fix it, is anyone even going to make it anymore? I don't know. I'm torn on these new materials, and I don't know how to, they look great, and they'll probably weather great, but I don't know how to evaluate them.
Yeah, and I think this site, I've been 7.5 years at the university. I haven't worked on a project this close to the lawn. And so,
No, you haven't, yeah.
I understand the challenges. I also see the opportunities. This could be a career-defining project for this team or for these developers. And so, coming in and, Carl, it's just like everything being cut back is, I think having them a chance to come back and reframe it, I think is great, so.
And you all have, in the ordinance, you all can make recommendations about the entrance course. So if something is seemingly pointless as a design control district, that's within your purview and your recommendations. And because BAR, we've had some discussions about why is this in the historic district, or what are we trying to accomplish here? So you do have that also available when that, and I don't know, Jose and I just have to sit down and say, all right, how do we have this, how do we schedule this and make it happen? But thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. Roy, I was just kidding, but
Phil.
What? You know, looking at April 9th writ large, there are a few things to celebrate, a couple of which we shouldn't. For example, today is International Be Kind to a Lawyer Day, and I just don't see how we can possibly endorse that.
We had a very nice presentation tonight in our closed session. Did we not?
Yes.
I didn't say what was.
Can't say it was nice.
No.
Yeah, can't say it was nice. Yes, right.
Breaking.
It's also, but I had a couple of other thoughts. It's International Chicken Little Recognition Day, but you know that would have been more appropriate during the height of the rezoning and consideration and our inboxes then. It's also the 293rd anniversary of the Day of Jenkins' Ear, which led to 7 years later the War of Jenkins' Ear, which is the Gulf of Tonkin resolution of the British Empire in the 18th century. All of these things, but what I think would be most important to you, Mr. Chair, is today is International Gin and Tonic Day. So if you can just make one slight adjustment to your evening routine, we should adjourn so you could celebrate that.
I'll pass on the gin. Is there a second? Is there a second?
That's a motion to adjourn, I think. I'll second.
We are adjourned.
We should adjourn.